Hey everyone, and welcome to the Endurance Collective podcast, where we are kicking off our first episode with me, your host Josiah Garcia, and my wife Courtney, as we discuss the launch and future of Endurance Collective, a ministry where we strive to connect with listeners just like you, so that together we can create community in the greater church and collectively influence the world for Christ. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Endurance Collective podcast. You're listening to the first episode. This is your host, Josiah Garcia, and with me today, I have a very, very special guest, and that is my wife, Courtney Garcia. And so we're going to talk here today and share with you a little bit about the Endurance Collective and what we're going to be doing. But first off, welcome, Courtney.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
One of the things that I don't have the opportunity to do many times is to publicly say how much that I appreciate my wife. She is my right hand, and there's no safer place or place that I would rather be than by her side. And so I'm appreciative of all that we've been through together, all that we do together, and any ministry that we find ourselves in, it's often together, and we truly do work better together, and I'm grateful for it. And so we're just going to be talking today.
I appreciate that. That is very sweet to say. So, and I feel the exact same way towards you. Well, so I love it.
That's kind. Well, listen, this is an unfiltered podcast. So we're going to be sharing today our story, and you're going to get to hear the story, no filters, just as it is. So I hope that you're excited about what we're going to be sharing today. I hope that you are leaning in and listening, because we want to share our hearts with you and share what we've been going through, where the Lord has been leading us, and what's next for us. Because that's one of the questions that I feel like we often get, right? Like, what are you guys doing? Where are you at? What's the plan? And this is a part of sharing the plan with you. So I hope you're listening today. We're going to be sharing a lot in this episode, and in really about what is to come and how you can be a part of that, how you can be involved. So I'm excited about it, but really just kind of jumping in, I think one of the questions that a lot of people are asking is kind of why? Why did we make the decision that we made regarding Endurance Church? And if you don't know, if you're jumping in watching, or maybe you're listening to this and you don't know our story, we had to make a difficult decision at the end of the year to no longer continue Endurance Church and continue the church in the capacity that we have served it for 5 years now, 4 years as a church and ministry. But we were building something. We were out there grinding with people who called Endurance Church home. And so there's a lot that took place, but really the question of why we closed has come up a lot. And so that's something that I want to address head on here, and really give you insight into some of the decisions that we made as a family, and also as a church and church leadership. And one of the reasons that many of you might know kind of what happened was we were dealing with some building issues. It seems like building issues plague every church at some point in their existence. But we were dealing with some building issues, and really we still are dealing with some building issues. You and I have continued to deal with those even after shutting the church doors, and that's something that we're continuously working through and going through. And so we ask that you continue to pray for that and pray for us as we manage that, and that we would do so with wisdom. But building issues was like number one.
Yes,
and then
never ended.
Oh no, it was still not ended. But we're talking about just building issues, and secondly, is more personal to I think both of us. Is really sitting down and talking about it as a family. You and I, we have 4 children, ranging from 8 to now to 2. So it's actually not a huge age range for 4 of them.
I feel like I was pregnant for 6 years or something.
Exactly. Church planning.
We were trying to grow the church. Okay.
We did our best. So
can't say action we didn't do our best. And we did our best.
We did our part. But really, I think part of the decision was coming together, you and I, and talking about, our family, because the option for us and for many in our church was to go back mobile. And we did that. We were a mobile church prior to getting a permanent location where we were permanent, not setting up, tearing down each and
Yeah.
every week. And so, we had to wrestle with that. Was that something that we wanted to do again? Is that a direction that we needed to go in order to grow the church and to continue to pursue the mission that God had called us to? And as a family, I think that we had to take a step back and really just be honest with ourselves and kind of check ourselves from a place of obedience.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that we both kind of knew the direction that we needed to go. Matter of fact, we talked to each other and talked to one another about it prior to even really bringing anything up to our leadership team and those who were around us. I sought counsel and others who have gone through similar things, others who had to make decisions. And, I think we knew that it was going to come down to a moment of obedience. And you and I talked about it. We knew that it was headed in that direction. Do you want to share more about kind of from your perspective, what we had to go through and how you felt that this was really a move of obedience on our end to close the doors of a vision that we felt God had birthed for us to pursue?
Oh, absolutely. And obviously, I mean, when we first started the church and first started the ministry of endurance, walking into it was a complete act of obedience as well, because there was a lot of things that we just kind of wrestled with and different things, but and then even like up towards the very end, it was also an act of obedience. And I think even opening the church, closing the church, it's all about just that direction and just listening to God and just listening to what He wanted for us. And I think sometimes, I think we as a church and as a leadership, we struggled a lot with, is this the enemy? Is this that? And I think because at every turn there was always a little something, right? And obviously, we know that, right? We know that the enemy's always got snares and there's always things out there. But this became a bigger issue in just in your heart. And I remember just feeling like, when you know that you know that you know, and I think that's just where it started kind of processing for everyone. And I think something that was kind of really I don't want to say the nail in the coffin, but something that just really became the end all, that really came down to all of our leadership, were thinking the same thing. They were completely on the same page in that we didn't necessarily just want to close the doors. I mean, we don't want to do that, but we felt like being obedient when God's asking you to, God will ask you to open things and He may ask you to close things, and that's not just limited to a church or a ministry or whatever. That could be anything in your life. And I think that whenever everyone was in the same heart, the same mindset, and we could just feel the Holy Spirit in His presence, whenever we all sit down as a leadership, we could just completely feel Him in the room. And it was it was a weird peace, and the Bible talks about that, that peace that surpasses the understanding. We didn't necessarily understand why we were in this situation, but there was a peace about it.
Yeah. That's so good. And I mean, I'm right there with you because, obviously it was a difficult decision, right?
Yeah.
And I think that we talk about closing a church, and it's not, again, something that we wanted to do, but it's something that there's just a certain level of peace about. And then from a practical,
trust. You just have to trust God.
That it's a trust thing, and for us, that's what we've been doing through it all. And but I also wanted to say that I think there's a practical side of it as well, right? Where it's kind of like where we had to do an internal review of our effectiveness in terms of ministry and reaching people and saying, hey, is this the best method? And is this our best avenue in reaching people in the way that God has called us to reach them? And so we had to do an internal kind of just looking within, deep within, and answering some hard questions. And I think that we both came out of that really understanding that, you know what, there is a different way. And to be honest and to be truthful here on the podcast, we don't have all the answers.
Oh, gosh,
and
no.
it goes back to what you were saying, that it takes a level of trust, right? To step out in faith and say, you know what, I'm gonna close this door. I don't know where we're going next, but we're gonna keep walking in faith, and we're gonna trust that God is gonna lead us, that God's gonna develop us, that He's going to take us to the places that He's prepared us for through the things that we've learned in life and in the season that we've just walked through. And so I'm excited about the future. But one of the other things that, as we talk about this being a podcast that is completely unfiltered, one of the other things that, I think that we need to share with people as we try to connect, as we share our story, as we share, even the humanity that is us, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because first off, if you're watching and you think that, we do everything perfect, you're sadly mistaken. If you think because pastor preceded our names that somehow we are, just exempt from any hardship, you were completely wrong.
Yeah.
And so I want to be that, and I want to share that with people, because part of the other reason that we made the decision that we made as a family was because of the toll that our personal family, our kids, our 4 children experienced and had to go through. And so, one of the things that I always made priority in my life, and when we said we were going to start a church, that we said it from the beginning, our family will be our first ministry.
Oh, yeah.
And unfortunately, we've seen people and pastors with good intent start churches and pursue building the kingdom of God, and all in the moment they lose their family, they lose their marriages, they walk away broken. And so that was one of the things that we were very, very committed to do. We were committed to our family and committed to our children. We were committed to listening to them, to hearing them, to seeing them. And I think that played a huge role in the decision that we made in closing the doors of Endurance Church. But not only that, the weight of leadership is also heavy, and we had to walk through things. A lot of times, leadership in any context can be lonely. I know that if you attend any pastoral summit or listen to any conference, they're going to tell you that it doesn't have to be, and that you can connect with people, you can find community, you can find all these things, and that is true.
Yes.
But at the same time, it's still lonely.
Even trying to find the people to connect with, it almost feels like a task at times.
Yeah.
So you find yourself like, forget it. I'll just be alone.
Yeah, it's so true.
It's almost easier.
Yeah, and we need community. Don't mishear me. You need a community. You need a local church. You need to be surrounded by people of like faith. But when you're in a place of leadership, no matter how you put it, there are certain decisions and a certain weight that has to be carried.
Yeah.
And we found ourselves in that place, and we found ourselves in a place where it was affecting our children, and not only the 4 children that we know, but you and I also had to walk through some things as we also pastored the church and ministered to people. And one of those things was a miscarriage. We were expecting a child. We are, first off, let me tell you, we are very private people. We don't share a lot of things. We work on things ourselves. We try to figure things out internally between you and I and God, and that's just the way we operate.
Yeah.
We do share things with people, but this is not one of them. But as we said when we started this thing, it's going to be an unfiltered podcast, so you're hearing it all right here. And so, even that was a difficult moment for us in the church, and walking through church planning and maintaining it, and continuing to remain focused in pursuing it. And so do you want to share a little bit more about that from your perspective? I mean, obviously it affected us. It affected our whole family. It made us start to just reevaluate some things, and internally of again, our effectiveness and how we can be better. So you want to share more about that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you're right. I mean, everything that you've been saying is so true. And we talk about that place of feeling a little bit lonely, and the weight and the burden of it is on a leader's shoulders. And, that is not for the faint of heart. And so as we kind of reviewed, things that were going on with the church, and it wasn't even necessarily all bad things. It was just obstacles, and it took a toll, stress wise on our kids and on us and on our leadership and on those around us. And then I think that it was about a year ago or so, we just, unfortunately, like many people out there, many women, walk through this very difficult thing that happens, and we were expecting a child, and it was heartbreaking, of course, and I believe that, we're going to see our baby in heaven, but just the toll that took on us mentally and physically, as alongside just all the other things. I mean, it was a very difficult time to process thing. And like you said, it's kind of like not always the best thing that we are so private
Yeah.
so about things. That's just kind of always how we've done it, and I mean, we love people, we love community, we love, linking arms with one another. And you're right, it is very important, but just in the particular situation that we were in, this was something that we chose to keep very private at the time. And this happened about a year ago. And so, through all of those things, that was also something that I think took a big toll and was a factor in in deciding these things as well.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you, and just what we went through and how we experienced it. But let me also say first, just publicly again, just brag on you a little bit, because church planning is not easy. Matter of fact, it's the hardest thing that I've ever done in my life, like harder than anything I've ever done. And I've walked halfway across the country. I mean,
It's true.
I've done some things that are both physically challenging, spiritually challenging, and church planning by far is the most difficult thing that we have ever done together, and even individually in our own respects, right? And the giftings that God has given us. But one of the things that I appreciate about you is just your commitment to the church and to the kingdom. I mean, and this is like just totally off topic, but we're unfiltered, right? But one of the things that I do appreciate was just your commitment, right? I watched you drive behind the bus as we would drive that truck to go set up and tear down. And I mean, you would have the window down so you could puke when you were pregnant with Eliza and Jordan. And I mean, just like your level of commitment, I don't see that in most people. And so I've always been very appreciative of your commitment to the kingdom. But the reason I bring that up is because secondly, I think people would probably look at us or just naturally think that I was probably the more hesitant to close the doors of the church.
Right.
And I think it was completely opposite.
It was.
Because
I was like,
I came to you and I said,
not doing that.
And I said, hey, Courtney, I think it's time. Like, I think it's coming.
And I was like, I rebuke you.
That is true.
No.
That is true.
I do not accept this.
Yes, that's very true.
The Lord really worked on me. He really did.
But I still, even in that disagreement, it wasn't even a disagreement. It was a feeling. It was an emotion. It was a connection, right? But I think that even in that, like I appreciate that level of commitment from you to not give up, to keep going, to grow through adversity, to maintain endurance, which is the ability to withstand and sustain through trial, right?
It's true.
It's all about who we are and what we're becoming. And so I've always been so appreciative of that and just your mindset in that. But I think we look at everything that we've shared, right?
Yeah.
We look at just some of the reasonings.
Yeah.
And there's other things that we could talk about here on the podcast. We'd be here for 8 hours. But really, that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
There's nothing other than that, right? And I think that's what we want to share with people who are listening is like, that's why the decision was made. Yeah, was money tight? Always.
I mean, when's it not?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, every church out there, I think, can attest to that.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, even if you've got the money,
it's still tight.
Yeah, the more money you have, the more money it feels like you need to spend in order to keep up with everything. So,
exactly. But I mean, God was so tremendously faithful to us, even in that regard. Seeing God continuously provide time after time through every season.
Being unfiltered, like I would have completely thought that money would have closed our doors before like the building
Yeah.
issues. Like I would have thought it would have been a financial issue that would have closed the doors first.
Yeah.
But that really wasn't the case.
Yeah.
Because I mean, and one thing that you kind of mentioned is like, I mean, could we have probably just kept going as a church? I mean, in theory, yes, but that's not the point. The point is that, looking back on these things and like understanding God's plan and understanding like the lessons to be learned and the things to be taught and then we talked about that overwhelming peace, like just following that and having like that obedience, like
Yeah.
you were talking about.
Yeah, and I mean the whole thing is wild to me because, and I'm glad you said that because I think that's another assumption that a lot of people make when the church closes.
Oh,
that,
yeah, that
they
you're
ran out of
giving up,
money. Also that they ran out of money though.
Yeah.
I mean, talking
Oh, yeah.
about from
That's true,
a
yeah.
money
That's it.
standpoint, it's like, oh, they just ran out of money. We didn't run out of money necessarily. We
I mean,
had,
it was tight, but we had it. Thank you, Jesus. It
yes,
was in the bank.
Amen. We had it, but it comes down to a decision, right? Of being obedient in the moment. When God says start, we start. When He says go, we go. When He says stop, we stop. And when He says end, we end. And now we have the opportunity in hindsight to really understand the why and why God led us down the path of endurance, why God called us to start a church, why God allowed us to lead in the capacity of a lead pastor role. And really, I think it comes down to, for us, I feel like we still ask the question why, right?
Yeah, and that's natural.
People ask, why did you close? And we're asking God the same question, right?
Sure.
Like, why are you having us do that? But as we look at it hindsight now, I think that we've really experienced revelation that the why in our lives and the questions of why that we've asked God through this entire process has revealed the what.
Yeah.
And the what for us is what we are now calling Endurance Collective.
Yes.
Endurance Collective. And so let's talk about Endurance Collective. We've had people reach out and say, what is the Endurance Collective? What are you guys doing? Again, they're asking us where we're at, where we're going to be, all these different questions. And I really think that it's this question of what. And so I want you actually, and I didn't, this is totally you on the spot, but I want you to answer that question. What is the Endurance Collective?
Well, the Endurance Collective, I mean, it is connecting people and it is connecting churches to each other, and not only to each other, but also within our community, not only of believers, but also of non-believers. So I think that's something that's very important and something that we kind of realized was missing whenever we were throughout the whole church process. I mean, this idea was kind of, in a weird way, kind of birthed, and I feel like was stirring almost throughout our church, that church plant process. There were so many times where like, man, I wish we had some resources, or man, I wish we had this, or I wish we had that, or, and then that collective of breaking down these internal walls and these external walls that have just been built up amongst, not only just people, but churches and things
absolutely.
like that. And I mean, I think for the most part, I think the culture, they want to link arms, but where is the link? And to be able to do that. And I think that's one thing that Endurance Collective wants to serve at, is the link, is the connection point.
Yeah, I love the way you put that. And I mean, that's exactly what it is. I mean, that's always been my heart. I think we've talked about that from day one. I one of the things that I love is seeing people come together. I am very, very just 100% behind that thought process as the church, that the church needs to be coming together more, that believers need to be coming together more, that we need to be working together more. And so often you see that not being the case. I mean, you see churches, like you were talking about, building walls, or people in leadership building walls, people viewing churches as competition, or worried about them taking these people or that people. And that was one thing that I was always committed to from the very beginning, that we're not going to be that type of church. We're not going to be that type of body, that we are going to help people find Jesus. That's what we do. That's all we do. We lead people to the foot of the cross, and Jesus does the rest.
That is the Great Commission.
That's it. right? We lead people
That's like the
to
most
Jesus.
basic thing that
Yeah.
we are called to do as believers and, Christians, to be Christ-like, is to
Yeah.
to lead people back to the cross, back to Christ, back to salvation, and having the Savior, and that one most common denominator. And even in that, I think you're right. I think sometimes that gets lost or muddied up a little bit amongst that, like, oh, we need this or we need that, and it can be driven by money or power or pride or what have
Yeah.
you, or
Yeah.
or fear,
Yeah.
of people losing people, and that's why, like, not having walls, like, even this as a ministry, not as a church, but as a ministry, opens more opportunity for that.
Yeah, and it totally does. I mean, you always talked about it that we probably lost people at our church because I told them to go to the other churches, and it's true.
Yeah.
I mean, I had no issue with telling people to go to other churches or to go to churches that I felt might better suit them. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, like
I was gonna say,
yeah.
to clarify, he wasn't just like,
Yeah,
hey,
I wasn't just get out of here.
Yeah, get out.
No, we loved everybody that came to the church and they wanted to be a part of it. But
well, and that's the thing about church planting. I mean, you and I, we had obviously had all the big ideas and the big goals and the big dreams, but the reality was there were things that we weren't able to necessarily suit for certain people or certain situations, and so we had no fear of people going somewhere else to, like, get what they need, get a resource that they needed. I mean, that's what it's all about. Like we said,
Yeah.
linking up and linking arms and saying, hey, you know what? We actually don't offer that. That's not, it's in the to-do list, but
Yeah.
it's just about the people and the people willing to commit to those things and bringing up those types of resources. So you're right. There were multiple times you and I both would just be like, hey, you know what? That's not something we can provide you with necessarily at this time, but you know what? We know Pastor so-and-so, and we know Pastor so-and-so, like, get your butt over there. Like,
go serve, go get connected.
Go get connected,
do
or
something.
go get that resource that you're needing for you, for your family, for your
Yeah.
children. That's something that we always had very deeply in our hearts. And so,
Yeah.
you're right.
Yeah, and just to just provide a little bit more context on, for me, where that came from, it actually comes from back in 2012 when I was carried a cross. For those of you that don't know, when I was 19 years old, really when I decided to, like, live out my faith, was tired of just going through the motions, and in church as a teenager, just kind of went to church, did what mom and dad raised me to do.
Oh, yeah.
Did all the checked off my box every week,
Yeah.
But I wanted more. I wanted to be used. I wanted to encounter God in a way that was not only beneficial for me spiritually, but that drew me near to Him. And so, anyways, back in 2012, I carried a cross from here in Fort Worth to Washington, D.C.
Like by foot.
Yeah, by foot, just
like
walking.
He walked.
And we went to Washington, D.C., and had a prayer service there. And so through that, though, one of the experiences that I had the opportunity to have happened in Tennessee. Don't remember the exact town, but I remember we were in Tennessee. And as we would walk through, it's pretty incredible. There would be people that would donate to the cause, people that would feed us. There was multiple people throughout the time that we had together as we walked that would just stop and help. They would give us a place to stay. And it was an incredible thing that I had the opportunity to experience. But in Tennessee, there was one town where when we got there, there was someone that came up to us on the side of the road, and they said, hey, I have a church that wants to have you guys come over this evening, and they want to feed the whole team.
Yeah.
And so I was obviously already happy that there was somebody that wanted to do that for us. It was a church, and we were going to get to connect with some people. But what really blessed me was that when we showed up, it just wasn't one church, but it was like 4 churches right there in the same community, same town.
Wow.
Churches that had come together, 4 pastors from different churches, from different denominations that were sitting at the same table, breaking bread and supporting someone who was doing something for the gospel. They didn't come up to me and ask, hey, what's your denominational background, or what's this, or what do you believe about this, or what do you believe about this certain theological concept before we help you out and this and that, right? I get it. Those things are important, but what I loved was that we found common ground.
Yeah.
And that we found that we were on the same team. Like, hey, we're working together. We're lifting up the same Jesus. Like, we're
Yes.
bringing people to the foot of the cross. And if we can stand on that common ground, the church can do some things, and it can do some damage to hell and to what the enemy is trying to do in our culture and our society now. And so, anyways, I that moment impacted me so incredibly much. And, you know, you look back and I'm like, man, that moment probably honestly had the most impact on me.
That's amazing.
Throughout the whole time that we spent walking and ministering. And it's always stuck with me. And I always walked away from that moment saying, you know, I want to be a link, like you talked about. I want to be someone that is not afraid of the church down the street. I want to be someone that's not afraid of connecting with people. I want to be someone who's not afraid to close the church on Sunday so that we can go out on the streets and serve. And we did that.
We would do that.
And we weren't worried about money or how that would affect the offering or how it was going to do this or do that. And that's my heart.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to see happen through things like the collective. And so that moment for me was a moment where it was defining for me.
Wow.
And it's been something that has continuously driven who I am in ministry and specifically in leadership. So
that is so good, you know. And even one thing you said, everybody came to the table.
Yeah.
You know, it just kind of made me think for a second that, like, I feel like not just churches, but even people sometimes we get cubicle mindsets. Like, we're in our little cubicle, we're doing our thing, like, and sometimes our church becomes our cubicle.
Yeah.
You know, it's got walls and it's separated from the outside. And so I love how you said that. They all just came to the table together. How awesome is that? You know, and I think that kind of spiritual mindset, if we could all just step out of our cubicles and just all know that we all have a seat at the table.
Yeah.
And that's where it all happens.
Yeah. And what's even more beautiful about that story is they didn't just come to the table, but they all contributed. They all brought something to the table. And I think that's where we want to get, right?
Yeah.
We want people to come to the table, but we also want them to bring something.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I know we've given a little bit of background here, but that's really what the collective is.
Yeah.
It's a collective of churches and believers coming together, and we are going to be working on ways to make that happen. And I think one of the best things that has come out of this is when people have asked us, and we haven't shared this with a lot of people. Most of you are hearing this for the first time, but when people are trying to understand what we're saying, it's kind of like we share what the collective is going to be, but we, in the same sentence, we're also like, but we don't know what it's going to be.
Yeah. we understand what we want and the vision, right? And I think that's the most important part right there. It's that vision, but I think it's still even bigger than what we realize as well.
Yeah, it's developing.
It's still in that development stages. That's why it's so important, you know, for people like you to stay on here, stay with us. You know, we're going to do our best to stay in front of you guys as well, you know, but we want you to be linking arms with us, and because there's going to be so much more for people to do and to get involved with, you know, on a level that's just like you said, collectively coming together.
Yeah, that's so good. And I mean, so it's developing. That's like the best thing I have. But within that development, in progress is what's happening. But we do have things going on. We do have things that you know, we're going to be doing. And so, you know, as you ask, what is the Endurance Collective? Well, it's a collective of churches and people that are coming together to worship. And so we're going to be having things like worship nights that you can be a part of. Matter of fact,
step one, really, when you think about it, you know, because as we said, it is still developing, and that's what we want. We want to hear from our listeners and our participators. You know, we want to hear what and from churches what they feel like they could use and how they could, you know, be involved and use the collective as a resource. But I think, kind of step one goes back to these, like, hey, if nothing else, we can all just come to the table and worship. Worship together. That's the first thing. It's really almost like that's like meeting the family, right? Yeah. Like when you go to, you know, your in-laws and things like that. Hey, we're all going to go have dinner together. Well, worship's kind of like our spiritual dinner together. We're going to go meet people, and that's why it's open to. I mean, if you're hearing about it, like, get your butt there,
Yeah,
you
get
know?
there.
Come on now. So, like, it's like this is the first step here. Like you said, it's developing, it's loading, it's in progress, all the things. And the first step here is these worship nights. We're all kind of dining together in the presence of the Lord.
Yeah, and what I love about it is that these worship nights are going to be made up of people from different churches, people that are coming together to make it happen. And so it's awesome to see what we've already been doing. And we have some announcements, by the way, if you're listening right now. And I'm not going to share that exactly with you, but we do have one of these worship nights on the calendar. So if you hang tight with us, hang with us until the end of the podcast, you'll get to hear more information on that and how you can be a part of it, how you can get tickets. They're free tickets, but you still got to get a ticket. So we're going to share with you on how you can do that. But really, the collective is like Courtney said, it's starting with the worship nights. We're going to have preaching. We're going to be having Bible studies throughout the year. We're going to be doing podcasts, monthly podcasts with different ministries and people that are coming on, that are sharing, that are meant to encourage and to build people's faith, and to also just remind people that we're all working together, that we're all pursuing and lifting up the same Jesus.
That's
and then also allowing us to partner with those ministries through supporting them, through serving alongside them. And so there's a lot of great things that we are working on as Endurance Collective is still developing. But the main thing is we're working. And if you're watching, if you're listening, however you're intaking this podcast here, know that we're working, that we got things right around the corner that you can be a part of and that you can invest in. And so there's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of work to do, and the laborers are few. But we're saying we're here. We're ready to work.
Hey,
and we want to work. So
scared us before.
Yeah,
with the laborers being few. That
no.
hasn't scared us, and it's not going to.
No, it's going to be good, and we're excited about it, and about just really, again, the effectiveness that we think that we can have in this type of role and in this ministry.
Yes, and like kind of all going back to the things that we've learned, the things that God's asked us to do. If He asks you to open, you open. If He asks you to close, you close. And like I said, that's with anything in life. But sometimes those closures, the closure does not mean end. And I think that's one thing we wanted to make so clear to the people that have been so invested in us and in our ministry and in endurance. Just because we did have a closure in one respect, it doesn't mean the ministry was over. Yeah. It doesn't mean God's calling and His purpose was over or done. It just means there's more to it. There's so much more to it. And here's the thing, God is not going to always just share His entire plan with us, right? He's not going to say, okay, open a church and for 4 years, and then I want you to close it. And I'm going to that's not trust. That's not faith, So I think that's the other thing is, we're so thankful for everybody that has come alongside us, and we're not done. God is not done with endurance. He is developing endurance. And listen, you all know, those of you that have been right by our side for many years, like, we love you guys so much. And you guys have endured. Like, you have truly endured. Yeah. And we are grateful to those people. I mean, we are so grateful. We have the other thing is we had so many supporters that didn't even attend our church, but that just linked arms with us. And it's almost like even in that, like, we were developing a bit of a collective atmosphere, because we didn't even have, there were several people who, loved and cared and invested in us and in the ministry, I should say, but didn't even go to our church. And it was just like we said, just like, it's like God was just giving us little hints and tastes of things before it was even coming to fruition like it is now.
Yeah, I think so. And I can speak on that from a more practical standpoint. You really didn't handle this side of it, but I did. I did.
But we talked about it. That's where you get your information. But I mean, you're right. Like, I mean, we were doing podcasts. We had people listening from all over. We had random people in like random countries that would always listen to our podcast.
Yeah, that would engage with us. These weren't just
we were like, oh, hey.
These weren't just people that were just listening or some, bot that's like just.
I mean, maybe, but I don't think so.
Yeah. Well, the thing was, we had people giving,
Yeah.
and I for me that was always incredibly mind blowing because,
Oh, yeah.
and again, this is unfiltered, so you get the real truth.
get all
But what in our church and in the 4 years that the doors were open, 40% of our giving came from people that did not go to our church.
Nearly half.
Almost half.
Almost half of our entire giving, what we intook as a ministry, came from people that never stepped foot in our doors.
Yeah. Yeah, it's incredible.
That's
and
incredible.
So you think about it's not normal.
That is not normal for those of you who church statistics out there. Like, and if you have anything to do with church statistics, you know that is not normal at all.
Yeah.
And I think too, like I said, like it's almost like everything's always been pointing in a direction of a collective of God showing us how much bigger His kingdom is. We're not in this cubicle of a church, His kingdom is so much bigger, and the resources that He has is so much bigger and greater, and has always been it's almost like training us in a way of like the next step. Listen, that's one thing. God is always, even if you think for a second, like all these hardships, the things that you experience on a day-to-day, like it's all preparation. It is all training for a new season in your life, for the next thing that you're going to be a part of or the next thing that you have going on. God is always training you. Sometimes it feels, I think, like, what are we doing? Or we're spinning our wheels. And in life, I'm talking about life for a second, like not just church, but like for people out there, just, hey, unfiltered, like this is just free content here, but, just felt led to say that. Like sometimes you feel like you're spinning your wheels, but listen, let me tell you, sometimes the wheels, when it feels like they're spinning like that, that's God training you in endurance and, preservation, being able to persevere.
No, absolutely. And you probably don't remember this because I know you.
My memory. Listen, I have, over the course of my life, I have had about 8 epidurals, had 9 back procedures.
That's the memory.
My memory is not what it used to be. So if I ever look at you funny, because I know you.
Yeah, we have conversations pretty.
Yeah, we'll get in the car. And I don't meet strangers. I do not meet strangers. So if I see you in Walmart, and if you have known me for 10 years, and I'm going to talk to you like I've known you for 10 years, and it never fails. We'll get in the car, and I'll go, "Who was that?
Who's that? Yeah.
Who was that?"
And I have to give you like their family tree because I remember almost
like,
everything.
They're married to. Okay, got it. And then I'll be like, I feel like I should go back and talk to him again.
We really do compliment each other.
Oh my gosh, it's great.
Very well. So, but no, I said that. I said memory.
Oh yeah.
Because
See, I already forgot.
Train
of thought.
Yeah, talking about just trial and going through things in seasons and God preparing you through it. I remember. You and I were talking about it, and I actually preached on this, but talking about trial and the things you go through, and one of the things that I said is that, I'm not always grateful for trial. I'm not always grateful for hardship. I'm not always grateful for those things. You don't have to be grateful for those things. But what I've learned is that I'm greater because of it. I'm greater for it.
That is right.
I'm greater because I've gone through it.
I do remember that.
Okay.
It took me a minute. I was looking at you funny.
I just had to remind you of it. But I think that for us, that
greater,
that is such a probably because you made the graphic. But
that's true.
So I'll give you.
I did all that too.
I'll give you credit there. You quoted it and made a graphic on it. So obviously it impacted you. It
did.
But for both of us, I think that
I wore lots of different hats.
That's true. But I think for us, that's kind of was a anthem for us.
Oh yeah.
Through what we went through and the decisions we had to make, and I think now hindsight, like I said, we're getting to see why.
Oh yeah.
We're getting answers to the why, and a lot of times let that be a lesson for some of you too. Sometimes the why in the trial, the why and the why me, why this, why that. A lot of times that comes later on.
A lot later on.
It comes on the other side of God's promise.
Yeah.
And
a lot later on.
But I think that Endurance Collective is a part of that. It's the promise that God has remained faithful, and that through the ability of us to remain obedient, we're getting to reap the blessing. And I believe we're going to continue to see it as we follow Him. And so I want to transition here into kind of our last thought. And that is how. Like, how is Endurance Collective going to make a difference? How is it going to impact people? Who is Endurance Collective for?
Everyone.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's for everyone. It's that simple.
Yeah.
I think
Everybody.
everyone. For everyone and anyone. And our goal through Endurance Collective is to create content for people to be encouraged in their faith, to share their faith, to connect with other churches and believers who are making a difference and making an impact right here in our city. And from there, I think it's going to grow. It's going to grow.
I love it.
It has no limits. God is not a God of limitation, but He's a God that blesses, that multiplies. And as we trust Him, as we link together, as we just get away from the fears that so many of us have been taught because of a certain church mentality, right?
Yeah.
That we don't have to necessarily be that way, that we can work together, that we can work with people who might not have the same theological idea around these different things that we read about, that you read about for me in seminary, but for others just like on the daily, right? Like there might be differences, but here is the truth of Jesus. It's the way that we come to the Father. Is it through Jesus? Do we come to Jesus and faith in Jesus and salvation by grace, right? Is that the way that we come to Jesus? And I think if we can come to that point, we can do a lot of damage.
Absolutely.
And we can reach people for Jesus, which has always been our heart.
Absolutely.
And so really it's for everyone. It's to grow your faith. It's to encourage you. It's to bring opportunities for you to worship with people of like faith, which we're going to be having a worship night. Again, hang tight with us. At the end of this episode, we're going to share details on how you can be a part of that. But we have those opportunities coming. There's ways that you can learn about other ministries that maybe you would have never known about. We were talking to someone not too long ago that was saying, man, I really want to be a part of someone doing homeless outreach. Well, we are going to be connecting with people
and we want to be able to be that
outreach.
Point of contact for people, like, exactly like you said, like, hey, I want to find this, I want to find that, and in the collective, we're like, oh my gosh, we just linked arms with so-and-so and did an outreach with them. And we can be able to become that for churches, for people, for resources, like you said, all about growing that ministry together. The Great Commission ministry, I should say.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. And we'll be able to connect you with those people. We're going to be having many of those people on podcasts just like this, so you can hear even more. You can hear their heart. You can hear their story, their testimony on how God changed their life, how God led them to where they're at and why they're doing what they're doing. And so there's going to be a lot of good things, a lot of content that I am very excited about, that I'm ready for, and that I'm believing for God to move and work through just this time of us coming together and believing, believing also, that He's going to do something amazing.
Amen. And also just to kind of clarify, like, this is what's interesting is because I still feel like someone out there might be like, so wait a minute, are they meeting? Like, wait, is there a building? There is no building. There is no, like, we're not necessarily like, we're not like a church anymore, like I said, just for those of you to clarify a little bit, this is a ministry now. This Endurance Collective is transitioning into just being this collective ministry. And like you said, that resource and things like that. And we can't wait for all this content and all the opportunity that we're going to be able to help provide to you and provide to churches and begin that big networking process where we can catch each other when we're falling and help lift each other up. That's love
good.
it.
Yeah. So we're excited to add on to that. We will be meeting in person though. From time to time.
From time to time,
so
that is correct.
You will have the opportunity to meet with us.
Yeah.
We miss you. We love you. Those of you who called Endurance home, those of you who gave and sowed and invested into us, you're going to have opportunities, and we're going to share a lot of those opportunities with you. And we hope that you show up. We hope that you're there. We hope that you can be a part and that you can be fed through this ministry and continue to help us reach people as we evangelize, as we preach, as we teach, as we lead people in worship. We believe that God's going to be in it, that He's already blessed it.
That's right.
And we're excited for it. So
that's right.
Anyways, all right. I think we've done enough. You're still going to have questions. I already know. You're still going to be calling and texting. I already know.
And that's okay.
But we're here for it. Yeah,
we'll
we're here for it. We're ready for it. And also, hopefully, over the next few weeks, you're going to get a lot of clarity, and you're going to get a lot of ways that you can be involved and be a part of what we're doing. So stay tuned. Be on the lookout. Courtney, do you have any last-minute thoughts, ideas, things you want to share with all those who are listening?
Oh, just honestly, like not. I mean, we have we've said a lot on the podcast so far, but honestly, I'm so excited, and I just feel in my spirit just the stirring, and and I feel like God is just it's like I can feel the sky opening up. I don't know how else to say it. I get a little metaphorical sometimes, but I just feel like God He is just here, and we're just going to be stepping in this new season, and I can just feel the amount of people that are going to be truly impacted in such a positive way, and I hope that is just going to become contagious and just spread. And listen, if you're not feeling it yet, you will be. You've got to get to these worship nights. You've got to get connected and with us so that we can become this collective, because it's going to take all of us together to really help create this networking process that we're working on. But I just want to encourage people out there, like, we love you guys, and we are excited. And like I said, I cannot wait to see how God just blooms this little bud. We're just a little bud right now, but I can feel it on the verge of just blooming and becoming contagious. Yeah,
I love it. And listen, you're going to have the chance to be a part of that. You're going to have the chance to serve alongside us. There's going to be ways that you can get involved. We're going to have things posted on our social. Our website, by the way, is different now, endurancecollective.life. We're going to have ways that you can be a part of what we're doing, these worship nights. You can serve on those nights. We're going to have different areas that we still need to serve, people to serve in. So it's going to be an awesome time. We hope that you can find a way to connect with Endurance Collective in some way, some form, some fashion. And if you're not able to attend, if you're not able to be a part in person when we host these events, I'm going to ask you this. Would you just pray for us? Would you pray that God would continue to lead us, to continue to guide us, to continue to bless everything that we put our hands to for His glory, because we're believing in it and we're believing for it, and we hope that you can come along. So that's our final thoughts. Anything else? Last chance.
That's it.
All right. Well, listen, we love you so much. Thank you for listening to the first episode of the Endurance Collective podcast. We have some announcements. We have some exclusive content happening right after the end of this podcast. So hang tight, hold on, keep listening so that you can get information on our upcoming worship night, our next podcast, who we're going to be doing that with, and much more. So hang tight with us. Thank you again for joining us today on the Endurance Collective podcast. Hey guys, this is Josiah. Thank you so much for hanging in there, hanging with us to the end of the podcast. And as promised, I have some exclusive content and information for you. And the first one is about our upcoming worship night. We shared about the worship night. We shared about the worship night on the podcast. And we want to share with you that we have something on the calendars. And so listen, you need to write it down. I don't know what you're doing. I don't know where you're at. You need to write this down, put it in your phone, whatever you got to do to get there, because it is happening on March the 22nd, Friday, March the 22nd at 7:30 p.m. We're going to be having a worship night at Backlot in Fort Worth. It's going to be incredible. You can find the information. You can find everything you need on our website. There's going to be links all over our social for you to download your ticket. You do have to register. You do need a ticket, but they are free. And so all you got to do is register. Let us know you're coming. There are also limited spots. We have about 100 seats ready and open for you. And so listen, you need to get your tickets now. You're hearing it. The tickets are open now. They're opening right now. And so you need to head over, follow the links on our website, on our social media through Eventbrite. You can get your ticket now. Let us know how many are coming, and join us on Friday, March the 22nd at 7:30 p.m. Lastly, we have a guest coming up on our next podcast with Remnant News, our friends over at Remnant News, who are doing an incredible job of sharing the news through a biblical lens and a Christian perspective. And they're doing an awesome job of really bringing news in terms of just cultural, political, whatever it might be. They're answering questions. They're answering the tough questions, and they're also giving us a political perspective. So I want you to check out our next podcast dropping in February and be a part of what God God is doing right here through the Endurance Collective. We love you. God bless you. Stay blessed.